Hey guys, today I want to show you how to track prep your motorcycle, and I'll be demonstrating on this FZ1 and give you some other tips for doing your first track day. Okay, so this seems obvious, but firstly you need to find a racetrack. Here's a map that I found just by Googling it, a map of all of the bigger racetracks in the country in the US. So look at this map, see if there's one near you. If not, then find a Facebook group with like sport bike riders and ask them if there's a racetrack nearby. They usually will be able to help you out and let you know if there's one in the area. And then you can look on the track day organization's website and see some details. But here are some things that are pretty universal between all motorcycle track day organizations that I'll tell you about in a minute. But so once you've found a track, you need to get there, obviously. So you can ride your motorcycle. Some people do that, and if that's your only option, then go for it. But if you have a pickup and you can load it in the bed, that's better. Or use a trailer, rent a trailer. U-Haul has motorcycle trailers that they rent out that you can pull even with just a regular car, or find a friend to tag along with. I'm more than happy to help out a new rider and get their bike out there and let them use some of my gear and stuff like that. So, but if you're on your own, can't find a truck, can't find a trailer, whatever your options are, you can ride it. Ride it out to the track. The two best ways, in my opinion, of securing a motorcycle, the best way is a pit bull trailer restraint, but they're expensive and you have to install them in the trailer or van or whatever you're using, or pickup. And so that's the best permanent solution if you're going to be using the same vehicle with the same bike over and over. But if you're going to be renting something, borrowing something, or you don't want to drill holes in your truck bed, then the next best option, in my opinion, is using Canyon Dancers, is what they're called. They're straps that go over your handlebars and connect the two sides, and then you strap it down to the trailer using that. So that way it doesn't put stress on body work. You don't have to scratch up your frame with the straps, nothing like that. It's a really good universal motorcycle transportation system. So then we move on to the gear. This is probably the most daunting thing for people who are starting doing track days, which is completely understandable, because even if you cheap out on everything, you're still going to be spending $600 to $800 for suit, gloves, and boots. Hopefully, if you have a bike, you already have a helmet, but if not, that's going to be another $300+. So if at all possible, find someone you know who does it and try to borrow gear from them. If that doesn't work, if you don't know anyone who does it, or if they're a different size, then you may be forced to buy stuff. But try your best to borrow gear, at least for the first track day or two, just until you get into it, because you don't want to be spending $600+ on gear and then decide, oh, this isn't for me. I don't want to be doing this. And you don't want to be stuck with all that gear then at that point. But anyway, yeah, try to borrow as much gear as you can, but buy whatever you can't borrow. So the gloves need to be gauntlet style. They need to go past your wrist bones. So they need to come up onto your suit a little bit. And then the boots need to go past your ankles. They don't, at least the tracks around me, they don't need to be specifically riding boots unless you're in like the intermediate or advanced groups. In novice, they're a little more lenient because it's just people starting out. So you can just wear boots that you have a decent amount of mobility in, that come past your ankles, and that's okay. And then the suit ideally should be a one-piece leather suit, but the tracks around me will let you in if your suit zips together. It can be a separate jacket and pants, but it has to zip together in order to be okay. You cannot have a separate pants and jacket that aren't attached. Another thing that sounds stupid is earplugs. It's easy to forget them, but you're going really fast. Some bikes are really loud when you're on heavy throttle, and so having earplugs is, I think, very helpful in decreasing the amount of input and strain that's going into you. Make it a little bit quieter, helps me focus. So buy a 50 pack or something of earplugs, use them for a day and throw them away. So that's kind of the gear and transportation and stuff. As far as the bike goes, you want to make sure everything's in good shape as far as tires, brakes, like foot pegs, the chain, stuff like that. So tires, for your first track day, I would say honestly, just set them to whatever pressure it recommends on the frame of the bike. Motorcycles, either on the frame, they'll have a sticker, or on the swing arm. This one's on the swing arm. It'll say, front X PSI, rear X PSI. And I would just do that for your first track day. Just set it and forget it. And that's one thing taken out of your mind that you don't need to worry about. It's really easy to, be overwhelmed your first track day and be worried about suspension and tires and stuff. Just don't worry about it. It's whatever the manufacturer recommends will be fine for your first track day. After that, once you start getting into the intermediate and definitely into the advanced group, you'll want to talk to the tire guy and get something figured out as far as pressures and what tires you're running. Just run the manufacturer pressure, in my opinion. Also, keep an eye on how old your tires are. I would say generally, if they're more than 5 years old, you should swap them out. Even if they have a lot of tread, they get old and hard and will start to lose grip. And so, in my opinion, swap it out to something fresher. Brakes, just make sure you have brake pad material left. You're not worn really far down. Check the fluid. If it's really dirty, bleed them. Bleed the brakes. Even if it's not dirty and you haven't done it in a year or two, then bleed them, just to be safe. It's good to have good brakes on track. The chain, just clean it, make sure it's not rusty, make sure it's not going to break, because that can slap a hole through your engine block. If that chain breaks, it can be really bad. So those are the main things I would say as far as maintenance are tires, brakes, and chain. Those are kind of the most common things to go wrong, and they're some of the most important things to have right. So then beyond that, you need to tape off any lights and mirrors and reflectors that are on your bike. So you need to tape those up, and then either unplug them, remove the fuses, whatever you need to do. Move on and demonstrate how to tape everything up and get everything set up for the track. So let's start by taping up the lights, taping up the mirrors, license plate, and then we can check pressure, go over the chain, make sure everything's in good shape, and go from there. So let's go outside. All right, let's start out at the back, start taping stuff up. So we can do a horizontal strip of tape here, cover up the turn signal. I already did the license plate, and then do a long one so it can wrap around this housing here. And that way, hopefully the wind won't catch it and tear it off. All right, so that's pretty much all there is to it. There's a couple little gaps, but in my experience, the organizations don't really care about stuff like that. Just so long as the 90% of it or whatever is taped up, then it's fine. So do the same thing on the other side. And let's go try. Yep, sure. Let's see one more. One. There you go. And then don't worry about how hard it'll be to get off later. This blue painter's tape is really easy to work with. So then signals are done. So let's do brake lights, and these are a bit of a weird shape, but we will make do with what we have. So just tape across, and then put a vertical piece, and that should be good. I'll give you some more tips when I tape up the front, so don't leave yet. So tape this up. Okay, and then we're done. Again, there's some little gaps on the sides, but if your track organization is pretty picky about it, you can you can cover up every square inch of it, but in my experience, as long as it's pretty well done, then you're fine. So let's move on to the front and see what we can do there. All right, so now we're working on the front. Let's start with the headlights because those are the biggest things. And my pro tip is go from the back to the front or from the top to the bottom, depending on how angled your lights are. And I'll tell you why in just a second, because if we do this and then this, then you'll notice that the leading edge of this piece of tape is covered up by this piece of tape. So wind can't get under there and peel it back. Okay, so you noticed I did top to bottom. That's because these leading edges now are covered up. So when the wind, rubs against it here, it's not gonna peel up. It's gonna just go along with the grain, quote unquote, of the tape rather than going down and peeling up these edges. So it works out a lot better. So I went ahead and did this side and did the turn signals the same way as the back. If you want to make it look better, take a razor blade around the perimeter just to make everything lay flatter. But in my experience, that just makes everything harder to get off, because then you have to peel it up from underneath there instead of just up here. But that is something you can do, especially if it's like you're not going to be riding on the street, you're just going to leave the tape on, semi-permanently. You can do that. So anyway, turn signals I did the same way as the back. One piece horizontal, one piece wrap around it, and it covers it pretty well. So next things we have to do are the reflectors down here next to the wheels. And then we have to tape the mirrors. So then let's go ahead and tape up the mirrors. Just a couple pieces of tape should do it, even with these large early 2000s mirrors. If it's easy to remove them, you can go ahead and remove them. But on this bike, I glanced at it and it looked like it was going to be a pain, so I didn't even bother. If it's easy to remove, I'd say remove them. It makes life easier, but if not, just do this. All right, we're done taping it up. So there are the mirrors, speedometer, turn signals, headlights, license plate, and brake light, and rear turn signals. So now let's pull the fuses, because you'll notice when I turn the bike on, the headlights shine through the tape, and the same thing with the brake lights. That's not ideal. So let's pop these fuses out, which is easy to do. So this one's for the headlights, and then this one is for the tail lights and turn signals. There we go. So now turn the bike on, no headlights, no tail lights. So we are good to go on that front, and then we will move on to tire pressure. So this is really all you need to get your bike ready to be track prepped, as long as your chain, your brakes, your tires are in good shape. So I have my tire pressure gauge. I would highly recommend getting a high quality one. These Motion Pro ones work really well, but they're $100, so they are pricey. But I would recommend a high quality digital one. The analog ones are not always very right. And then obviously the tape we've been using. And then I just have a cheap Walmart jump pack with a tire inflator. And that is a lifesaver, because then you don't have to sit with a bike pump pumping it up. And if your bike dies or your tow vehicle dies, you can jump it with that. So I highly recommend them. They're under $100 for a cheap one like this. But if you just have a bike pump and want to use that, then by all means go for that. But so let's look here at the recommended tire pressure. Front 36 psi, rear 39 psi. So those are pretty high pressures, but again, it's a big heavy bike, you know, 1000cc sport touring bike, so that's definitely believable. So let's go ahead and set you down and let's check these pressures. All right, so 36 is what we're aiming for. We have 35, that's close enough. All right, so 39 is what we're aiming for. We've got 38.7. Again, really close. Don't worry about the 0.3 psi difference. So that is definitely close enough. Okay, one thing to point out, the track organizations, none of them that I've seen like filters with a nut on them. You should try to get one like this that's just bare. I always use the manufacturer filters. I buy a Yamaha filter for a Yamaha, I buy a Suzuki filter for my Suzuki. I just want to get whatever the manufacturer recommends, and then I change my oil every weekend that I race, or every few track days. So anyway, that's all I have for you. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and learned something. But anyway, we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.